What is that? What are you trying to do? No, stop.
You-
Don't do that. Stop. No, no.
The power of one. Power of two. The power of many.
All right, I get it!
May the menstrual cycle be with you. Always.
Episode 3 of The Acolyte might have finally done it. They might have finally broken Star Wars beyond repair. We can debate about that, but they did a lot of damage to the brand with this episode, which was intended to be divisive, in my opinion, in the same way that The Last Jedi was also intended to divide the audience. I think that was their goal with this episode and with this series overall. I think this episode did a lot of damage to the concept of the Chosen One prophecy that there was. They try to redefine the Force. I think they're setting up that the Jedi are going to be the ultimate villains in this story, and the theme stated in this episode is it's not about good and bad, it's about power and who is allowed to use it. I think that that is something they are going to double down on as the show goes. But I think the overall thing with this episode, this flashback episode about the origin of the twins, the biggest problem with it, beyond lore stuff, and I'm not a lore expert by any means, you know, I mostly know the films. I don't know as much of the deep lore as a bunch of other people, so feel free to correct me or whatever in the comment section. But just as a viewer, if you don't know any of the expanded universe stuff, this episode on its face is poor, in my opinion. The dialogue, horrifically bad. And I hate speaking badly about child actors. I don't blame them. Please do not go on social media and talk about this to them or anything like that. They could not handle the script that they were written. And I blame the producers and the casting directors for that, because they have these key characters here who are carrying the story, and they need to be able to hit all the different beats in order for this story to work. So the fact that they got actors that couldn't handle the source material, I blame the producers. But also I blame the writers, because they do not know how to write for children, and the dialogue in this episode is very poor. It is very amateurish. Oh, the Jedi are good. The Jedi are bad. Yes, fantastic dialogue. And then later in the episode, the girls go back and forth saying, "What have you done? What have you done? What have you done?" Say 3 or 4 times. I don't know. Very poor writing and acting, and I don't blame these young actors. I blame the producers, like I said. So that is the real issue with this. It's not just that the lore is broken. George Lucas's intentions with a lot of things is twisted in this. It's the fact that it's bad on its face. It is just a poor episode. It's boring. We didn't need a full episode flashback for this storyline. Could have had it in exposition, little flashbacks here and there. A whole episode with pretty much no action. There's nothing going for this. I'm okay with an episode with no action. Some of my favorite shows, Mad Men and Downton Abbey as examples. These are shows with zero action in the entire series, and yet I'm extremely captivated because of how great the acting and the writing is, and the nuances and all of that. The character arcs, that is all very weak in this episode. So there's no great character arc. There is no great action or anything really that cinematic. And that makes this episode fail. So just out front, I want to say that before we get into any of the other stuff, it honestly doesn't matter how much it breaks the lore or anything, because it sucks anyway. It doesn't matter whether or not it is actually accurate to the Force or whatever. You can have your opinions about that, and that's fine. My opinion is the show sucks regardless of that. So we're going to get into some of that now. But we start off with this tree. I don't know the significance of the tree, whether this is a magic tree, something out of, I don't know, like an Avatar movie or something, and they're using the Force, and the two twins, you can't really distinguish them on appearance, which I think is not great from a viewer standpoint. You can only really tell them apart by what they're doing. Basically, May is the Sith side, of course, and Asha is the good side, wants to be a Jedi and all of that. And here we have May messing with this alien butterfly thing with this very ham-fisted kind of rivalry writing. And I don't know if that tree is the poison we learned about. I don't really care. But there's some significance to the tree because we get there at the end. I don't know if that has something to do with the Sith Lord, the Smiley Sith Lord, or whatever. I suppose we shall find out. But then one of the girls' mothers is here because there are two mothers, and they are chastised for being away in the woods on their own. They're not supposed to do that. And there's a ceremony coming up, this ascension ceremony where they become real witches. And then we have this discussion here of, you're being too nice to the kids. Oh, you're being too mean to the kids. Blah, blah, blah. That is the context here. And then we have this scene which starts the breaking of Star Wars here, in my opinion. So here we have the thread scene. I did a short about this, and this scene basically contextualizes this coven of witches. They use that word coven of witches, and this is the witches' definitions of the Force. Now, again, I'm not a lore expert, but my understanding of the witches in Star Wars is that they don't use the Force. It is something else. I don't know what that is or what the magic is. I've only seen a little bit of it, but apparently these witches use the Force. I don't get that. And here she's talking about how it's not the Force. She has this very elitist way of speaking about it. Like, she knows better. She's arrogant. The Jedi are stupid. She hates them for some reason. And we are better. We understand more. And basically breaking down the Force according to the movies of Star Wars, the Jedi use the Force. They don't really use the Force. They're trying to align themselves with the Force because the Force has a will of its own. And the Jedi are trying to become one with the Force and align their personal will with the will of the Force. And the Sith want to abuse the Force, tap into it, and use the power for their own will. So there's a metaphysical aspect to it. And they're trying to do a shallow imitation of that, and they're trying to distinguish this from other interpretations. But I gotta say, I don't really understand what it means. You know, I reported on Film Threat, great channel, Chris Gore and Alan Ng. They got a preview of this show, the first 4 episodes. I watched their episode and covered what their opinion of it was. And I'm not sure whether or not I agree with that because I don't really think they explain it very well in this scene. Is this just this culture's interpretation of what the Force is, or are they trying to redefine it in the lore? Does this break the lore or whatnot? I'll just say on its face, without even getting into that conversation, it doesn't make sense because it's inherently contradictory what she is saying here. Because she is like, oh, the Force, it's not the Force, it's a thread, and it goes through everything. And you don't use the Force. People say that you use the Force, but they're really not. But really, it's a thread that you're pulling on. It's just two contradictory things. It's like you can't use the Force, and yet we're pulling on it. So how's pulling on it different from using the Force? It sounds to me like a Sith interpretation, except just using the word thread instead of Force and pull instead of use. I don't understand the distinction. What is new about this? I don't get it. So it sounds to me, I think that they are trying to move the franchise forward and pose some new questions and answer some things. So I do think that it's not just this culture and their opinion of it. I think Lucasfilm is trying to do something new. I mean, why else would they spend $180 million or whatever it is on this show if they weren't trying to do something with it? So the other aspect of this is that these twins, they had no father. They are not conceived in a natural way. They used magic to create them. So that is similar to how Anakin was created. He didn't have a father, immaculate conception, very clear symbolism there. But in this case, I think that they're trying to co-opt kind of the chosen one prophecy that has been in Star Wars lore forever, and they're trying to subvert it or make it their own or make it apply to this show. And I don't know. I'm not really with that. It just doesn't really seem in line with George Lucas Star Wars, but they're trying to do something different. And here we got probably the worst scene in the entire episode, where we have they're chanting. They have this refrain of 1 is powerful, 2 is better, more better, more better. I don't understand. So I don't know what that means. It just sounds kind of like a meaningless phrase. But I think what they're trying to say is we need to take the Force back, and we can't do it on our own. We have to work together. And there's this prophecy with the 2 sisters. 1 is strong, 2 is better, so they have to align together. And I'm assuming, extrapolating from this, that they are going to do a story arc where the 2 sisters start to understand each other's point of view, and they have to work together to stop a greater threat. And that's probably going to be the Jedi, in my opinion. So, like the mother says here, it's not about right and wrong. It's about power and who's allowed to use it. There's so much discussion in this episode and the show in total about the law. What is legal? What is illegal? They are here. They are outcasted here, the witches. And there's this oppression narrative. The galaxy doesn't like women like us. And I don't understand that, because in George Lucas Star Wars, there is no prejudice except for droids. That was something they showed in the movies. George has talked about how there wasn't, racism or sexism or any of that. It was just droids, and you can understand based on the Clone Wars why that might be the case, but that is my understanding. Now, the galaxy looks down on, like bounty hunters, evildoers, the Sith, and stuff like that. So, did they do something that led to this? Or are they just trying to inject a new anti-witch narrative into the show? Maybe it was in the lore previously. I don't know enough to really say about the witches in particular, but I never heard about it. Maybe it existed, maybe it didn't. It seems to me like it's a new element to the show, and it's just very obvious messaging and all of that. And the old Republic games had racism narratives in them, but that wasn't... it's a different era, and this is pretty close, like 50 years or something before the prequels, so I don't know that it fits. And I don't really know if it's witches that are oppressed or what it is about them that makes them bad, but given how the Jedi have talked about, unauthorized Force users, and you're training children, and the Jedi are looming in the background, they're spying on the kids. And I don't really understand how they even learned about this, if they really are outcasts, and the kids they were immaculately conceived, so how did they even hear about this? I don't understand what's going on with that. The Jedi lie in this scene, it seems. They pretend that they didn't know anybody was here. The woman even calls them out on it, so the Jedi in this are kind of villainous. They're not telling the truth, and you can make justifications for why lying might be appropriate in certain circumstances. I don't believe that this is really one of them. And they're kind of trying to take children away, although they say they need consent to do it, but there's a threatening overtone to it, so it doesn't really seem like actual consent. It seems like forced in a way. So I do think that they're trying to take it down the road of, maybe this was in the lore before, like I said, some book I didn't read or whatever, but it really feels like they're trying to make this like Halo with the Spartans, or like The Witcher, where, these children are kind of whisked away and they're taken through brutal things or something. I don't know. It doesn't sound like the righteous good side, and I think that's the point. Because the Jedi have been depicted like cops in this. They're talking about the law. Under the law says this. We're catching criminals, we're putting them in jail cells, and the aesthetics are very much like a cop show. That's why in my first review I'm talking about how they're talking on radios. Yes, I know the radios were in the prequels. Obviously, I've seen those movies many times. But I listed that in a list of things, like they have helicopters overhead, and you could say it's technically it's not a helicopter. It looks like a helicopter. It is the aesthetics of a helicopter, and they're talking about stop in the name of the Jedi Order. Talking like cops on TV. So it has the aesthetics of a cop show, and it's not a good one either. So they basically co-opted Jedi into police force, and it just doesn't feel right because they are more than that. We know as fans that they are more than that. So it doesn't feel right. And I do think that they are supposed to be the bad guys in this. And now we get to stuff at the end of the episode, because obviously we have this sibling rivalry. One wants to be a part of the Jedi. I don't even know why she would. What does she know about the Jedi? How did she hear about it before? She was born on this planet, I assume. And everybody on this planet thinks the Jedi are evil, right? So how did she get this conception that they're the good guys? Doesn't make any sense unless there's some other force at work here. So, she can't lie. It's just a very ham-fisted scene. Just the characters directly saying what they're feeling. We know that she wants to be a Jedi because she says that she's a Jedi. I mean, they could have done it better where she's like about to fall off a cliff or something and the Jedi saves her. There, the save the cat moment that makes her like the Jedi. Something. But we don't really get to see the origin of this thought process. They just tell us directly what they're feeling. Again, another reason why there's no real point to go to the lengths of having a full episode of this if you're just going to have it be that straightforward. There's no real point in seeing it play out in that case. So here we have a scene where it was decided that they were going to lie, and now the girl, she's actually going to go with the Jedi because that's what she wants. But, a lot of the witches are like, let's just kill him. And it doesn't seem like they really did anything that bad, even though there is this threatening overtone. They are saying that they're here for, they need consent to take the children away, and she wants to go. It's not like anything that's deserving of let's murder them all, and it's a very strange just scene. And I think we're supposed to think they're good guys. I don't really know how we're supposed to feel about the witches. Maybe they want it to be ambiguous, but either whatever it is, it's just not really working. I need something to connect with. I don't really just like this ambiguous sludge, when it comes to Star Wars. I kind of like in Star Wars that it is kind of clear cut, and if you do have a gray area, it's a transition from good side to bad side, and there's a lot in the lore that does that. If I want moral gray stuff, I'm going to watch Walking Dead. That's my favorite franchise, one of my favorite franchises. I'll just go watch that. If I want to have something with moral complexity like that. It's a morality play targeted at young children. So this ambiguous stuff, it just doesn't really connect in my opinion. So I've talked about in my review before, we have this scene where there's a fire that is started and then it burns the whole coven down and these witches are just in a pile of dead bodies. And it doesn't seem right. And here's where, I said in my review, it just seems like a plot hole, but I'm sure there's going to be something else. People are theorizing about how they actually died. A lot of people are saying, like, weren't you paying attention? There's obviously poison. So the poison we saw is a drink. I don't know if it comes in a gas form. And, either way, who's poisoning them then? Is it the Jedi? Or is there another Sith? The Sith is looming out there. And the Sith just happen to be waiting around for the one girl to decide to catch something on fire. Maybe the Sith talked her into it. Or maybe the Jedi decided that they had to kill them all, which makes them obviously evil bastards. So, I don't know. And there's the guy who killed himself last episode. And he didn't really do anything in this episode, so there's got to be more to that story, right? And he has scars at the end. So what happened to him? You can just assume that it happened in just the process of things burning down and escaping, but maybe there was some kind of scuffle. So all the answers I don't like, because if it's the Jedi, it makes the Jedi evil, and I hate it. So I don't like that. If it's the Sith Lord looming, for one thing, it just kind of makes the Jedi look stupid here. This guy's Soul, I think his name is. They don't investigate it at all. Obviously, they're short on time, but you don't see any, like, lightsaber wounds or anything. And it does make him look stupid that he didn't catch on that there's more to the story. Because it makes it look like if the Jedi were in on it, Soul is not. He's the good guy that we're supposed to root for. At least I hope they give us somebody to root for. But, obviously we had that first scene in the first episode where the woman who dies, the first Jedi who was killed, she says, "Oh, we don't pull lightsabers on unarmed people." And then her murderer says, "We both know that you do." I don't know if that's foreshadowing for the fact that they actually did kill all of them. And I just don't buy that they all died right here because it happened so quick and the girls were right there with the fire. So if it is supposed to be this plot twist where something is revealed down the line, you want to make the first explanation at least appear plausible, and it doesn't here, so we're expecting more to it. So I don't think it makes this episode better, the fact that they have another thing down the line. And if it's the Jedi, I hate that. If it's the Sith Lord, it's just very kind of convenient. So no matter what they end up doing, it still, I think, makes this episode look stupid. So I don't like it. I think this episode was horrible. Probably the worst episode of Star Wars that I've ever seen. And just briefly, I kind of want to go through some of my issues with the previous episodes because might as well. This might be the last video I make on this, but I got so many views on that last one, I might have to make some more, but, I don't want to. So we've already talked about, this scene here. It's an okay fight scene, but not anything that blows my mind or anything like that. And it is way too easy for this killer here, May, to take this Jedi out. And I get that they're trying to do the thing where the Jedi want to save people and that's their flaw. They can get distracted. It just does not feel like it's earned to me. And also, it's just very convenient this bartender stays here. I can understand a bartender staying in his bar when there's a fight like this there if he doesn't have a child. Because if it's just his bar, that's all he has in his life, he wants to be there with a blaster maybe to defend it. But I guess blasters are outlawed in this era for some reason, so I don't know, whatever. But he's just hanging out there. I don't know why he wouldn't have left with everybody else, but it's extra stupid that he has a kid there. Like, you're just going to stay in a dangerous area with your kid. My mindset would be, my kid is in danger. We're going to get as far away from here as possible to safety. And I'm not going to just stick around. Like, forget the bar. At the end of the day, it's not important as long as my kid is still alive. That's to me a parent's mentality, or how it should be anyway. So I don't know. It's just very convenient for the plot line that he's there. Then we got her being a mechanic, which I don't know why they made a new word for it when mechanics have been in Star Wars. I played a lot of games. Now, I don't know the deep lore with the expanded universe, but I do know the video games. I've played pretty much all of them. And I know that there are mechanics in Star Wars, okay? So we don't need a new word for it, but that specifically means they're going out onto the surface of the ship, which, again, we're just discussing laws all the time. So the law is they're not allowed to and only droids can do it. I don't know the thinking behind that or what that is for. We have this scene here where the fire starts, and, it is funny on multiple levels. One, obviously there's no fire in space because fires require oxygen. There's no oxygen in the abyss of space. Now, I, as a sci-fi fan, am willing to overlook that when it comes to explosions and stuff like that. I can look past it because it just looks cool. Obviously it's not realistic, but when I see something explode, I don't want to just see things drift apart like how it would realistically be. I do want to see an explosion, so I'm okay with that. But it is silly when it's an actual burning fire. It does look humorous. It is goofy. Now, it could have been like plasma or something. They could have come up with something, I guess, but it's just goofy. It's just stupid. And it's especially dumb that she's just like, oh, I saw a fire. Anytime I see a fire, I just instantly have Vietnam flashbacks. And when we see the final thing, and I don't know, it's just kind of goofy. It didn't seem like why doesn't she have questions about how her mom's died in a fire, right? Like, why didn't she think that there's something else other than the fire? Like, they all just drop dead, they don't have magic, they're like, I don't know. But anyways, it's a little goofy that they have that. We're going to skip ahead here. This character, Soul, I really want to like him, right? And apparently she's married to the showrunner. Didn't know that. But She's just generic cop character, just not at all interesting. I like this actor. I really want to like this character because he has that stoicism, but he also has a heart, right? So we've had characters like this before. Qui-Gon is one that I would point to as the archetype that they're shooting for. This actor, he learned English for this show. Awesome, mad respect to the dedication. I'm rooting for this actor. I want him to be great. The writing and directing murder any potential for this character to be good. And the reason for that is he has those two sides of him that are contradictory, the stoicism and the sentimentality. And when you do a character like that, it's got to be subtle. You got to have transitions that make sense. You got to pick one to be the dominant side, and you got to have it peek through. The sentimentality has to peek through the stoicism in a subtle way that makes sense and you can pick up on over time. They didn't do that with this. It's just wrong. That gets whiplash from one side to the other. He sounds stoic in this first scene, and then he's instantly looking at photos. He's getting emotional, just back and forth constantly, no real transition between them. He gets too emotional for the stoicism to work, and he's too emotional for the stoicism to work. So both halves of his character just crumble. So it doesn't work at all. And it's a shame because this archetype character, Qui-Gon, like I said, is probably my favorite type in Star Wars. Because I like the idea of the Jedi being this stoic force, and they're talking about how emotional attachment gets you compromised and you can't make the best decisions, and it's kind of an appeal to rationality and the spirituality. But just as a human being, I think love and family are above everything. So those are the most important things in my value system. So I could never be a real Jedi. So I really admire that type of character who wants to do the right thing. He wants to be a Jedi, but he also has this sense of attachment to things because that is just the human experience, is wanting connection. So I think that archetype really works, and I don't know, they fail it with this. They get close. The best thing I can say about this first episode is I like the robot designs. And they have this, weird, parasite thing that's keeping this guy quiet. That's cool. I think these guys are a little over the top, the criminals, but it's okay. This design looks kind of weird, but it's something different. I like this, detaching and killing this robot. It's a little easy for them to escape, but this scene is probably one of the better parts. The robot she has is just derivative at this point. We keep doing the robots. We have BD-1 in the Jedi games, which are awesome. I love Fallen Order and especially Survivor. Really like those games. But we got BD-1. I get it. It's, for kids, so you got to have that cutesy stuff in there. But I just don't find that droid stands out at all or is interesting. It's just whatever the plot needs it to do, it's there. And it doesn't really have much of a personality, so it just doesn't connect. And these other Jedi, are just nothing characters to me. I like the design. I like having more aliens in Star Wars. If it was up to me, half of the main characters would be aliens. I get why they don't do that, because you need to have them in prosthetics for that to work. One of the issues with the twin characters, just having the vision there to see the other twin, it is a Star Wars thing. I get the visions, but it's just a little cliche. They got to have this dude with his shirt off. I don't know why. It doesn't really seem I guess they're trying for a comedy thing. It just doesn't really work either. But one of the problems with the twins in this show, you can look to a show called Orphan Black, which I love that show. Got a spinoff coming up soon. I'm going to be reviewing. Looking forward to it. But that show with Tatiana Maslany, she is the lead character, and she plays 14 different roles in that show. And they are all extremely distinct. It really feels like different actors are doing them all, because they all have different tics, different ways of moving. They have very distinct looks as well. So you can tell at a glance, practically by their silhouette, which one is which. Very, very well done. they spent a lot of time crafting those performances. You don't get that sense with these twins at all. They don't feel very distinct, and this is a problem with the kids as well. So that is one of the problems why this does not work. The other thing, the show is just very dimly lit, and I get that that's the move nowadays with most TV shows, cinematography. I don't like it. I want to go back to lighting things more. So I don't like how darkly lit this show is. And I don't know. I guess I just need to let that go because that just seems to be what they're doing nowadays. But I don't like it. Can we go back to having some lights and scenes? I don't think I'm the only one saying that either. But yeah, and then we get the villain at the end. And the mystery is, who is that? Who is that? I haven't seen it enough to really give a shit. I'm assuming it might be their mother. You know, the mother might have survived. Whoever's not dead in the pile of witches is probably who it is. It's kind of dumb that there's only one person capable of making this poison and they're within walking distance of where this person is. Why would she want to pick that poison to be her particular thing? She could have just had... She's just talking the dude into killing himself. She could have used anything. A knife, you know, just a standard poison that's not this special thing. So that's kind of dumb. Just the whole investigation thing, it's just pretty weak storytelling and not very interesting in my opinion. And I don't like having a Jedi kill themselves at all. You know, I don't, especially a lot of people will use the argument, Star Wars is for kids, why do you care if the storyline makes sense? And I hate that argument because there are lots of things for kids that are still well written. And if anything, to me, it actually matters more because kids are going to be more impressionable than an adult. An adult will watch a stupid thing and just be like, all right, whatever. But a kid will see a Jedi killing themselves and it's not a good message. Like, it's confusing. And I like how clear-cut Star Wars is for that reason. It's a morality tale for children. And we're just really confusing things. So using that argument makes it worse in this case, in my opinion. I don't want, if it's for kids, I don't want to have suicide in it. That's a clear line in the sand. Like, I don't want to see that in a kids related thing. And maybe there's something I'm not thinking of that's a great kids movie that has suicide in it, but I don't really think it's an element. But you know, we have this kind of weak fight, and the dude is just watching in binoculars in the distance, but I guess they want to try to get information out of her. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't like this show, man. But really, if I had to give it a score, it's not like a 0 out of 10 or anything. The first 2 episodes are maybe like a 4 or 5. Like, I kind of nothing them, you know, like, I don't hate it. Episode 3, I strongly dislike. And it, like I said, I think it breaks Star Wars. So that is the one that I would give like a 2. It was just particularly weak with the acting. Maybe it's even lower than that. But, I mean, at least it's like competently shot, you know, and the effects are all right. So that gives it at least a point or 2, but I don't know. I don't think the show could be redeemed even with those plot twists that I mentioned. So anyways, I think I want to be done covering this, but it might be good for the channel to keep doing it. But regardless of that, we got stuff I'm actually looking forward to coming up on Sunday. We got, of course, The House of the Dragon. Very excited for that. So I'm going to cover season 2 a little bit. We'll see how much. And then the week after, we got Orphan Black Echoes. So 2 shows on Sunday I want to cover. So we'll see how that goes. You know, obviously I pick and choose what I cover on the channel by view count and stuff like that, what people are interested in. But I want to cover those. And tomorrow we got Life is Strange double exposure reveal. So I'm going to cover that and things we learned about the game there because I'm excited for that. I'm a fan of that series. But other than that, you know, let me know what shows you want to hear me talk about, and I will definitely consider it. But with that, it's been your boy Shuggy, and we'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.